Hi, I'm Kelly Hill Ross, and thanks so much for tuning in to another show. As a citizen of Maryland, I had an opportunity to meet two progressive women from the Maryland Democratic Party. Eva Lewis, who is the executive director, and Yvette Lewis, chairwoman of the Maryland Democratic Party. They aren't related to each other, but they both have the same goals when it comes to politics. So get your favorite beverage, tea, or coffee, and listen in to what they had to say. First of all, I want to say thank you to both of you for allowing me to interview you at this historic time in our lives, and it's very important. And I have to thank Patricia Thomas for introducing me to you two young ladies, because this is just phenomenal. It started with the first question. At what stage in your life did you decide to get involved in politics? And this is, all of the questions are directed to the both of you.
It was interesting for me because I started out, I had a career on stage. I was an opera singer. And I certainly had no intention of doing politics, but it was the Bush-Gore election that did it for me. It was a situation where when that challenge came up to the election, and I saw how emotional and invested everyone was, and I felt like I had not done anything. All I did was voted. And I made the decision then that I would never be a bystander to political decisions that would be made for me moving forward ever again. So from that point on, I started volunteering and working in campaigns because I wanted to be more than a casual bystander to the political process, but also to my destiny. And that's exactly the way I felt. So that's what led me to politics.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I guess in a sort of way, I fell into it just like Yvette, like, since the age of 18, been voting in every single election. But it wasn't until I made the transition from Chicago. I was an attorney in Chicago and moved to back home to Maryland, and was looking for a job. And it was 2012 campaign, and so I decided to volunteer, and then got a job as an organizer, and then that led me down this road, and haven't looked back since. So I guess in that way, kind of fell into it, where it wasn't like a direct hit in terms of like I wanted to do politics, but it's like more of, once you see how the sausage is made, you're like, well, maybe there's a better way of making this sausage.
Yes. Okay. Well, what were some of the obstacles that you've mentioned a few that prompted you to get involved? Did you see, as you were saying, Yvette, that you felt like you weren't really making a difference, so you got into it? But were there any major obstacles that you said, oh no, I don't want to see this again, I got to get involved?
Yeah, well, just having the will of the people overturned, that was an obstacle. There will always be an asterisk beside George Bush's name because the Supreme Court came in and decided what happened with that election. So I felt like people's voices were silenced. And then as we moved forward and the Voting Rights Bill was allowed to expire, once again, people's voices are being silenced. And then all of these suppressive types of things were put in people's way. For example, voter ID laws and gerrymandering, all of this put in the way of people being able to exercise their rights and have their voices heard. So that has made me even more determined. And it's not like a one-hit wonder. These things continue every single day with people being denied the right to vote. And that just makes me more committed to staying involved.
Mm-hmm. There you go. And the same thing. And I think for some, like particularly on our local level, some races that are determined by 17 votes, right? The one that pops to my mind is the current Baltimore County County Executive Johnny O, who won his primary by 17 votes, right? And it just goes to show you that voting matters, right? And the things that go behind the scenes in terms of making sure you get out the vote matter. And we all know the challenges that are the obstacles that are put into people's way, but knowing that there is a way to jump over those hurdles, and then also at some point remove those hurdles once we have the right leaders in place.
That is fantastic, because I understand that in addition to you know, the people going out to vote, there's also, what is it called, the electoral vote. That's also a deciding factor that I think a lot of people who vote don't know about that, don't know how that process, you know, works. Why do you think that there are some people who just don't get involved or don't vote? You have any?
Well, for me, I think that part of the problem is I don't think we've done a good enough job of explaining to people how consequential and important their vote is. And I think that we've gone about it the wrong way. I think we tend to talk about voting from the top down. President, you know, the national elections. I think we need to flip the switch. I think we need to talk about voting from the bottom up. What your county council does, what your central committees do, what your sheriff does, your attorney general. You know, you get upset when you see certain cases where an attorney general comes out, for example, and gets involved in the Bush v. Gore, or an attorney general gets involved, for example, in the Breonna Taylor case. Well, these are elected positions. So I think we need to start talking to people from the bottom up and getting them to understand how important their local elections are and how those elections impact their everyday lives. Because right now, people often say, well, it's not doing anything for me, nothing changes. Well, things do change when you work from the bottom up instead of from the top down. I think that's where we need to start focusing.
Okay.
And just giving concrete examples of how that affects your life, and so people can actually see that these elected leaders do matter to you, and in some ways even the local elections are even more important than the national, because our county council and the city council folks have a lot of power over our everyday lives.
Well, do you think that, and this is sort of a question that I didn't pose to you, you think that maybe if it is perhaps in school, if kids were taught about it early on and they understood the process, by the time they, you know, get to be a person who can vote, they understand the whole process? You think that's something that could happen as well?
Eva?
Yes, for sure. Like here's the thing. Like I think I've seen on TV shows like a civics class, and I don't know how if those classes are still going on, but we probably do need to as Yvette would know, because a former teacher yourself. Civic classes, I think would definitely be helpful, because one, like if you were to go on the street right now and ask, you know, regular residents, like what are the three branches of the government, you know, a lot of people would have some difficulty saying what are the three branches of our federal government, and then there are things that, like, even folks who vote on a regular basis still don't understand. And here's the thing, because they got lives, and like there are other people who focus on this, but like how laws get passed in Maryland, like here in Annapolis and things like that, and how, like, once again I go back to the sausage, like how is the sausage made in terms of our laws and the voting, and that's the sort of thing that we definitely could do more education on, and there are some resources where people try to make it fun and entertaining for people to digest it.
I think there's some adults that can take those classes as well. We don't need to do it with the kids in school. There's some adults that can take those classes. Quite frankly, for example, there are people right now in our state that don't know what a state senator does or what the delegate does. The difference between the state senator, the difference between the delegate. They don't understand what the city council does, what the county council does. They just don't get it. And so these are things that different, what the mayor does, for example, right? So these are things that I think we could all use a refresher course on.
Okay, so how long have the two of you been involved in politics?
Yeah, so mine is shorter, so I'll go first. So I've been involved since I had done like one-off phone banks here and there, like a little bit college and then law school, but really it was the 2012 Obama campaign, where I was a fellow and then got a paid position as an organizer. So since I would say the end of 2011 till now.
And for me, it was 2000 with the Al Gore election, and I think about that so much now. How much different things would have been had, you know, we had won that election. What would have been different? I mean, there would have been no Iraq War. It's entirely possible that well over 4,000 people would still be alive. Yeah. You know, we just don't know what course history would have taken us. So that's why I'm just determined now to be as much a part of the conversation and as much a part of the process as I can be.
Okay, so can you give me some positive pointers that will help people to understand the political process that they can do? What should we be doing to make ourselves more knowledgeable? Can you think of anything on a local level?
Absolutely. Well, first off, all of our elected officials, our local elected officials, they are constantly having community meetings and town halls, and they send out information. They have websites that's chock full of information. We can be proactive participants and proactive learners in this process. If you're a novice, and even if you aren't a novice, you owe it to yourself to find out what positions your elected officials have and how that impacts your life, and do you agree with it? And don't let another election cycle pass by, calling your neighbor and say, hey, have you gotten your ballot? Tell me who to vote for. You need to know who to vote for, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. And I think people just have to, I'm assuming that, most people get news from somewhere, right? So if their news is they're on their phone, they're on their Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, follow your elected officials, and see what they're posting. They are active, and so they will be posting what's going on in the community. If you're an email person, sign up for the emails. They send out consistent emails on sometimes weekly, if not a monthly basis. And then, as Yvette said, once you get on their email list or their radar, you will find out when they're going to have these town halls. And folks are having Zoom calls like we're doing right now, where they're still trying to get the information out. And then obviously, in terms of newspapers, right? We subscribe to the Baltimore Sun, Washington Post, New York Times, and things like that. And so, wherever it is that people get their information or even their entertainment, there are outlets there where you can find out more.
Okay, so when you think of the senior generation, from what I can see, there isn't one place where a person could just pick up the phone and just say, hey, look, I want to stay involved in what's going on in my district. Where do I start? Because the places that you mentioned, the newspaper or, social media, do we have one central location? Can we call?
Well, my goodness, it's called the Maryland Democratic Party.
I love it.
That's right. Yes. That's right.
That's what we do. mddems.org. That's exactly what we do. You can go to our website. You can find ways to volunteer. You can find ways to get involved. You can find ways to connect with our elected officials because they're there on our website. So that is exactly what we do.
Yep.
Okay.
And give us a call or email us, and we can help you out.
Okay, so we're going to go away from that. Are there certain states that have high or low voting numbers that you recognize? I mean, in your travels, can you say, well, we noticed that in zip code areas, so-and-so, it is low voter turnout as opposed to another. Do you have information about that at all? Either one of you?
So Eva's probably a good person to answer that because of the work that she did with the state chairs.
Yeah, and Kelly, are you talking about in terms of Maryland, or are you talking in terms of the state? I mean, the nation.
I'm talking about in Maryland. Okay, so I don't know. Do you
in Maryland? Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Definitely. So for Maryland, we're pretty good. In terms of where the areas where we would need to increase our voter voting is usually in our more rural areas, right? The Western Maryland and Eastern Shore and Southern Maryland. Obviously, these are areas where a lot of times we do not have a lot of Democrats, but in terms of overall, the voting should be higher. I will say that, in 2016, Maryland had the 8th highest voter turnout of any state, with 67% of eligible voters casting the ballot. So in terms of overall as a state, we are doing well, but there's we want to do more. And I think with the activities we're doing for 2020, getting ready for 2022, we are going to see those numbers increase. Also, we've already seen these numbers increase right now in terms of the vote by mail that is happening. We've had 1.6 million ballots be processed. Today, October 20th, is the last day that people can request their ballot. And we expect to even have higher numbers for our in-person voting that's starting with early vote October 26th through November 2nd, and then November 3rd being election day. So there's always work to be done to increase those numbers. But overall, as a state, we are, as I said, like in number 8, we are doing pretty well, but we know there's more to be done.
Okay. All right. And Yvette, did you want to expound upon that, or?
No, I think Eva's correct. And what we are finding with each election cycle, especially since 2014, at least on the Democratic side, that there seems to be more and more of an intensity. And sometimes that happens when you're not in power, right? So we haven't had the governor's mansion for 2 cycles. So the intensity seems to be really strong on the Democratic Party because, let's face it, every party wants to be in power. And you tend to see your numbers tick up when you're not. And so there is an urgency. That's the way I would describe what I'm feeling, what we're feeling now, especially in the numbers of ballot requests and ballots that are being returned, which is why, you know, Eva could talk about those numbers and what we expect to see going forward between now and Election Day. Our job is to make sure that that intensity carries over from cycle to cycle, which tends to be challenging, which is why, you know, we operate on a Kane principle, constant and never ending. Principle of organizing and making sure that we keep people engaged even in the off cycles, yep. Because that's when you tend to lose people. So we try to find a way to keep people engaged throughout.
Okay. Eva, did you want to add anything to that, or you good?
No, that I think that's it. It's never over because there's always a campaign going on or one you have to get ready for. So for us, like, it's getting through these next 2 weeks, but then getting ready for 2021. We do have some races in Annapolis and Frederick that we're gearing up for, as well as the big kahuna of an election we got coming up in 2022.
Okay. Now, have you, either one of you, ever experienced any backlash because of your party affiliation or the fact that, you know, you are a woman? Have you seen anything, have you noticed anything there? Or is it a challenge?
You know, not really. And I think well, for me, being the Democratic Party chair in a blue state, tends to minimize that a bit. I think it might be a little more challenging if we were in a state that was predominantly Republican. Yeah. But because we're in a blue state, I haven't experienced that per se. And one of the things that I can say about our Democrats in the state, yes, we're a big tent party, and we're a party that has a lot of different ideas and attitudes. But basically, we have the same values, the values of what we think Democrats ought to be, which really makes it, not makes it easy, but it does make it so that we can all work together towards a common goal.
Okay, that's great. Okay. In closing, I don't know how much time we have left. Can you tell me how your organization, the Maryland Democratic Party, how it will make a difference after the election? Will you still be as visible as you are now after the election?
Madam Executive Director?
Yeah. Here's yes, and in some ways we probably will be even more visible because, one, Joe Biden is going to win, right? And so that victory is going to be at our tails, and we're going to feel good, and we want to peacock it out, right, and go into 2021 with that favor. And so, you know, for Yvette and myself, like, you know, we're going to get through 2020, and we're doing everything that we need to do in terms of our swing state voting. And like we're calling into these battleground states Monday through Sunday. We're also calling into Maryland to voters to tell them that they can vote, and they can vote by mail, or they can do it in person. Just make a plan to do it. We're also texting folks, doing chase ballots. Like, me, and we know people who have requested ballots and chasing them down. So all that is like warm up. Right, this is the getting ready, getting conditioned for 2021 with those races in Annapolis and Frederick, but then also 2022 when, just for everyone, like we have our governor's race, right, and it's an open race. Hogan is out; he's term limited, so we're going to have folks on that side who are new, folks on our side. All the General Assembly, the senators and delegates are going to be up. We may even have competitive races in comptroller and attorney general and U.S. Senate race, right? So these are all things that are coming, this perfect storm, right? And so we know we have a Herculean task that we have to take care of, and we've already been thinking about laying the plans for those years, and that way, I think we're gonna need this win. We're gonna need this motivation to carry us through these next 2 years.
And the thing is, what happens at the end of an election, and Eva can speak to this too, because she's been on stage, I've been on stage, and you put so much into getting ready for the performance, right? And then you have that performance, and when the performance is over, there's this sort of a letdown, but you want to go back and recapture what you've been through, even though it was stressful, even though it was horrible, yes. But you want to recapture that again. So what we want to do is capitalize on that feeling, because there's been so much intensity with this election. We want to say, hey, we got more work for you to do. Okay, we got that one done. Let's move to the next one. And a lot of times people are ready to, because they're not ready to let go, especially when you win.
Yeah.
They're not ready to let go. So what we want to do is capitalize on that and say, okay, you won one, how about let's go on for another one?
That's right.
And then we take that into 2021 for the municipal elections and local elections that we have, but then into 2022. And we think, because as I said before, there is a hunger among Democrats because we have not had the governor's mansion since 2014. And so there is a hunger in the Democratic base right now to take back the governorship here in Maryland, and we intend to capitalize on that, and we intend to win.
There you go.
Okay. Now, one last question. What is the alternative plan? Do you have, and when I say alternative plan, I'm not going to say the other thing, but I'm going to say, do you have an alternative plan if things turn out a little different?
It's funny. And I guess I'm a peculiar kind of person in this way. I don't even want to put that in the universe, if that makes sense. But there is an alternative plan. But if I speak it, then that makes it real. So I prefer to stay on the course that we're on, that course of positivity, because I don't even want anyone that's out there phone banking, and those people that are canvassing, and those people that are giving all these hours towards this victory. I don't even want them to hear that I'm even considering that we're not going to win, because I don't want to dampen enthusiasm in any way, because I think right now we have all of our volunteers in an incredible space where they just want to work, work, work. And so what I want to do is give them that space and give them that encouragement that I feel myself, and I want to impart that to them. So if there is an alternative plan, and if we have to put it in place, it'll come after November 3rd. But until then, there is no alternative plan. Okay. Our plan is to win.
Yeah, we're going to win. Yep.
Well, I like that. Well, ladies, I want to thank both of you very much for allowing me to talk with you. After the election, I hope that maybe we will be able to come back and talk again about the final selection. And I just enjoyed it. So thank you both so much.
Oh, thank you for having us. This was great.
This was really good.
So
thank you.
Again. Being a part of the political process can make a difference. Being informed and knowing your rights is part of our Constitution. Make sure you get out and vote, because your vote will make a difference. Stay safe.